Even so, her heart jolted. Her breath grew rough. Terrified, she turned around. She saw something she didn't want to believe. She saw despair. No way, over 100 mounted knights had appeared behind them. They must have been lurking in the watchtower's blind spot, pressed up against the wall. If they were showing themselves at this point, it was probably because they had determined that those two were the last of the escapees, since no one else was running out. Wasn't far from the village to the forest, but humans and horses moved at different speeds. Even if Arg and Brita could get away, it would be impossible for the children. The horses would definitely catch up to them. The knights were raising things that gleamed. She had no doubt they meant to cut them down from behind. She cringed with the fear of what had happened before. Nemu was running toward the front. Would she make it? Enri, keep running. Enfira stopped. NFI, I'll buy you time. Don't be ridiculous. I don't think Lupus Regina is going to come out of nowhere to save you at the last minute like last time. I said to run. Enri had stopped, and he screamed at her. If you want to buy time, I have a better way than you. Enri took out a shabby-looking horn. It would summon 19 goblins. Still, each one was strong. They would be sure to buy them time. You dummy, look how many of them there are. What will 20-odd goblins do? Enfira was right. They would just go around them and continue their attack. But it would be dumber to not blow it. That goes for you too. Enri didn't have any more time to talk. She put the horn to her lips, ready to blow. Save us, goblin friends. It was a bass sound that thundered out, shaking the ground. Enri blinked, hardly believing she had produced it. When she summoned Jujumu and the others, it had made a sort of pathetic poo like a kid's toy. Enri, she noticed that Enfira's alarm stemmed from something he was looking at past her farther back. She turned to follow his gaze. She shouldn't have had time to while the cavalry was charging at them, but for some reason, the knights had jerked their reins and come to a stop. Perhaps because it was so sudden, the horses were rearing up. Enri looked behind her. What? In Yggdrasil, players could name their own items. There were a few exceptions, though. One of them was artifacts. Artifacts were dropped as completed items. The artifact Goblin General's horn, it was a small, shabby-looking item. This item summoned 19 goblins in all, but to Yggdrasil players, these goblins were mobs so weak they were practically useless. So why did an item like that have such a grand name with General in it? Why not just call it Goblin Troop's Horn? Many Yggdrasil players wondered the same thing. No one ever came up with a satisfactory explanation. Everyone had just accepted that it was a strange name. But actually, there was a reason for it. And the reason was Jujumu swung the magic greatsword he'd taken from the giant of the east. He put all his might behind the blow, but an enemy soldier blocked it. It seemed he couldn't halt its momentum entirely, though. The soldier's stance broke momentarily. Normally that would be when Jujumu would launch a follow-up attack, but the soldiers surrounding him didn't allow that. They came at him from either side, well synchronized to cover the first soldier's weak spot. With a click of his tongue, Jujumu swung his great sword like it was part of his body to repel both attacks. This goblin is magnificent. I can believe he's holding the three of us off this well. He's quite a fighter. I never thought I'd meet a goblin this strong. Jujumu noted the composure in their impressed voices, which irritated him. If it was Jujumu against one of the soldiers, he would win. Against two, it would depend on the enemy. Against three, he was very likely to lose, and sensing another soldier trying to come around behind him, he inched backward. Against four, he had no chance. At first, it had been easy to break through. All the soldiers were weak. The wedge formation of Khan's heroes sliced through the kingdom's formation and dug deep into it. Stronger men had appeared, like layers of rocks in the ground. Their gear was much better, and they seemed to be the enemy's elite forces. It wasn't far to where the enemy's commander stood, and it didn't seem densely defended, but their opponents were tough. Without taking his eyes completely off the four soldiers he was fighting, he looked around. He saw that his subordinate goblins were outnumbered. The ogres were in the same boat. They had powerful arms and great stamina, but not much else. Soldiers specialized in hit-and-run tactics ran circles around them. Khan had already lost several residents. The goblins were the front line of the wedge formation, but their enemies were so numerous they couldn't hold them all back. Each time they managed to make inroads, someone fell to the ground. It was an impossible battle from the beginning, so these results were only natural. But Jujumu wondered if maybe that's when it happened. He couldn't completely block the sword that swung down and took a scratch. He brandished his great sword and created some distance. Who are you? You're definitely not just militia. Jujimu was level 12. Considering that, his opponent's level must have been 10 or 11. The other three were level 8 or maybe 9. A typical villager was level 1. People who trained in Khan might reach level 2. Even the soldiers who accompanied the tax collector from Rantel seemed level 3 or below. So these soldiers were quite strong. Enfira and Enri were NT warriors, so he couldn't be sure, but they seemed strong. He counted them as exceptions. This goblin, or is he a hobgoblin? It makes sense since there are so many. He doesn't look like a hobgoblin. Maybe he is goblin royalty, maybe he took the village by force, but that doesn't explain why the people are putting up such a desperate fight. Humans aren't very smart, we've taken them hostage. Can't you even figure that much out? That's definitely a lie. Villagers like that can't fight at this level, they'd be more likely to stab you in the back. I sense battlefield bonds that transcend race from you guys, but why are goblins and humans fighting side by side? How should I know, dimwit? Looks like I was right that you ray on the same side. If you wear NT, shut up. That satisfied smirk on your face is pissing me off. Jujimu brought his sword down, but the outcome was the same as before. The soldier could block the blow, but he couldn't halt its momentum completely. His stance broke. When Jujimu tried to perform a follow-up, the others all aimed at his weak points to intercept. In that case, having made up his mind, Jujimu didn't dodge the swords. The blades aimed at unarmored parts of his body sliced into him. The sensation in those two places was less like pain and more like heat. Jujimu gritted his teeth, used a skill, and shifted his great sword's attention to the soldier coming to slash at him from the side. Goblin blow. He unleashed a powerful attack aimed at the soldier's mail, a weak point. It cut through the armor and left a large wound in the man's flesh. The moment he was hit, the soldier spasmed. The great sword had poison magic, though the man seemed to be resisting it, albeit not perfectly. His ability to fight hadn't been completely eviscerated, but then he wasn't as if Jujimu was distracted, but he failed to dodge a strike from behind. The breastplate he was wearing protected him, so he wasn't seriously injured, but the impact of the sword made his whole body shriek. Shit, that's my line, how dare you do that to Vike? Vike, fall back, go around behind him. This was a melee, so Jujimu dispatched other soldiers who entered his range as well. Their shabby gear meant they were probably peasant conscripts. The sheer numbers they had were really unfair. Fall back. These goblins are seriously tough. Fall back. We'll handle this guy. Go to the villagers in the rear. I don't think so. Jujimu whipped his sword around, and the peasant soldiers backed up, frightened. The heat turned into a throbbing pain. Aside from swinging a sword, one of the most important things a warrior trained in was the ability to get used to pain. And another goal was to understand one's pain threshold. This would allow him to run when things felt bad. Jujimu's senses told him he could still fight, but only that he could still fight. How many more minutes would he be able to stall them? Out of the corner of his eye, he saw another villager collapse. The earth soaked up his blood. They hadn't had much of a chance to begin with, but now they were doomed. That said, he figured they had bought Henry and the others enough time to escape. So all that was left for him to do was lurch forward toward death. Our objective is the enemy boss. He would go even if he had to go alone. Did they see his determination? The expressions of the soldiers in front of him hardened. Just as Jujimu clenched his sword and resolved to charge, a commotion went through the entire battlefield. When he glanced in the direction his opponents were looking, he couldn't look away again. It had appeared next to the village. It was quite simple. Its true power wasn't to summon 19 goblins. In Yggdrasil, no one had managed to put its actual value on display, so it had been discarded as a junk item. In this other world, however, it unleashed its true power for the first time. Its name, once more, was Goblin General's Horn. Its real power, if three conditions were met, was the heavy, rhythmic sound of a drum echoed across the battlefield from next to Khan. The eyes that gathered in the direction of the noise popped wide open immediately. An army of about 5,000 strong was advancing to the beat of the drum with orderly motions. Both Prince Barbro's side and Khan's side first assumed it was reinforcements for the kingdom's forces. The only difference was whether they could think of someone who would send Prince Barbro reinforcements out here or not. But the way the newcomers looked made it immediately clear they were NT Kingdom reinforcements. The army was made up of goblins. The race of subhumans called goblins was smaller than humans, about the size of children, but their determination made them seem double or triple their actual size. They were wrapped in the sparkle of steel. Their weapons made for maiming and killing were polished to perfection. These were the weapons of warriors. This wasn't a militia, but an army of true warriors. Now, anyone still alive, run for it. Reinforcements are here, we have reinforcements. Run that way, Jujimu barked loudly. He didn't know who they were. They could have been friends, foes, or someone totally uninvolved. Running to them just because they were of the same race was the wrong choice. They probably should have fled back to the village. But Jujimu sensed something like sympathy. He had a hunch they honored the same master. He felt they would shelter and protect them. The Khan survivors didn't hesitate to run for the great goblin army. The encirclement crumbled as they ran. The kingdom's soldiers knew they should pursue the runners, but their movements were sluggish. That was only to be expected. The huge army that appeared was so well disciplined. Approaching carelessly would be dangerous. There were two reasons the kingdom's army let Jujimu and his men go. The first was that if they passed on the chance for a follow-up attack, it would let them reorganize their formation. Drums were telling them to fall back. Another worry was that if they killed any goblins, the great army would unleash fierce and immediate retribution to avenge their kin. The new goblins readily accepted Jujimu and his men, loosening their formation to allow them to slip inside. Once the last ally had been welcomed, they closed their ranks and returned to their original positions like a steel door. Jujimu looked over his friends as they lay on the ground, dead tired. No one had made it unharmed. Many of them were so relieved to reach safety that they fell unconscious. As he scanned the area, his vision seemed to blur. The number of goblins, ogres, and villagers had decreased, but I guess we were lucky that over half survived. Connor, he called the name of the only goblin in their group who could use healing magic, the cleric, but Connor shook his head. He had already used up all his mana in the fight. Then what about first aid? Can anyone? Midway through Jujimu's shout, he saw a bearded goblin wearing a Chinese headdress. The goblin carried a fan made of feathers. He was approaching. From his demeanor, he was clearly the core figure of this army. Ho 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 ho, you are General Henry's escort, I take it. I have been entrusted with command of this army. I'm a goblin strategist. Now that we have come, no one will do you harm. Never fear. We'll take them to the healing core right away. The goblin raised his fan. A robust group of goblins arrived bearing stretchers. Quickly now, load them up and carry them over. Since we are here now, the loss of even one life would be a disgrace. The injured were carried away. You are also wounded. I think it would be best for you to get treatment from our sorry. That is very kind of you, but can we talk first? I'll last that long. The strategist must have believed that Jujimu's attitude wasn't just bravado, because he nodded once and replied, I would expect nothing less from the leader of General Henry's escort. What would you like to ask? Well, ho ho ho, I imagine there is only one question on your mind. If you are looking for General Henry, she is in the screen position behind me. I am sure she will be pleased to see you. Oh, that is good. He heaved a genuinely relieved sigh. So much tension went out of his body that he felt like he might fall over, but he didn't want to look so pathetic in front of their successors. All right, then I suppose I'll go see her. It doesn't seem like we'll have much of a role to play in the battle to come anyhow. Ho 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 ho, I appreciate you yielding the action to us newcomers. What, it is fine. The seniors' duty is to give their juniors a chance to earn some achievements after all. Thank you, ho 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 ho, we'll be sure to show you what we can do. Now then, our only option is victory. Instruct the heavy infantry to advance. What is that? We nearly had them, shit. Barbaro's eyes practically popped out of his head as he glared at the intruders who had obliterated his efforts. Nothing was going his way. Why do I have to face a goblin army in this tiny village? It was so aggravating he wanted to rip his hair out. If it was an imperial army, he would have happily ordered his men to continue fighting. But these were goblins. Even if they won, who would care? Prince, requesting permission to withdraw. He turned scornful eyes on the knight and his suggestion. The reasonable thing to do was withdraw. He didn't know why such a large goblin army had appeared in this place, but if he reported back with that information, it would probably be counted as a job decently done. But it wasn't hard to imagine that if he turned tail and ran without clashing swords at least once, he would be branded as the prince who fled from goblins. And if he was defeated, he would be the prince who lost to goblins. The nobles were so hungry for gossip that the rumors would spread until everyone had heard them. Anyone who didn't see the battle wouldn't care how strong the goblins were. All that mattered to them was if the story was interesting or not. Barbro mentally cursed the aristocrats, ridiculing him from their positions of safety. Permission denied. Fight them, Your Highness. Look at their equipment and their impeccable formation. They are as skilled or even more so than the goblins we've fought so far. Our chances of winning with an army made up of mainly civilians are low. Please order a withdrawal. Barbro knew that without being told. But he had no other way to protect his reputation besides fighting. Now they could only pray the goblins weren't as tough as they looked. You fool, do I really have to spell out how dangerous it would be to leave this army here? The Kingdom's army is headed for the Katsi Plain as we speak. What would you do if Rantel was attacked while it's practically empty? Understood. All they could do was hit them once and withdraw immediately after, that if the army was as powerful as it seemed. Their aim was to fight the Empire, not suffer a major loss here. He maintained enough composure to keep that in mind. The soldiers ahead of Barbro tidied their ranks, and almost as if on cue, the goblin army began advancing. The enemy was in 3 long columns. Against them, Barbro's men were in an inverted wedge. They weren't in a wedge to make the best use of the cavalry. The cavalry had superior combat strength. Also, their enemy's formation was weak against flank attacks. At the front of the goblin army, facing them, were heavy infantry. They carried giant shields that practically hid them. The pressure of their perfectly synchronized march felt like a wall pressing in on Barbro. Inside his gauntlets, his hands gripping the reins of his horse started to get grossly clammy. The militiamen with their spears crashed into the heavy infantry and their shields. First, these forces would halt their advance and pin them down. Then the idea was to have the cavalry charge their flank. The militia and the heavy infantry clashed. A goblin shout reached Barbro. We are the Goblin Heavy Infantry Corps under General Henry. Don't think this will be enough to stop us? Before he could wonder who General Henry was, Barbro was distracted by groaning movements coming from his formation. The enemy shields were shoving the conscripts back. Naturally, those who were pushed bumped into the men behind them. The formation began to crumble. Alarmed, the cavalry units on either flank leaped into motion. The right flank moved a little faster. They tried to swing around to attack from the side, but 17 riders, sparkling in silver armor, rode out to meet them. They weren't atop horses, but shining silver wolves. We are the Goblin Holy Knight unit under General Henry. Our loyalty lies with her. From the left flank sprang magical beasts similar to wolves. Goblins rode on their backs. The wolf leading the pack had wings. The goblin astride it shouted, and its voice sliced through the conscript screams to reach Barbro's ears. We are the mounted Goblin Corps under General Henry. Here we come. As the riders entered the fray, Barbro heard the twangs of a great many bowstrings. He looked and saw dozens of arrows raining down on the melee. He focused on the enemy's side to find where they were coming from. They were in the second formation. Goblins in eye-poppingly red clothes held large bows. Their physiques were strikingly unbalanced. Their bodies swayed with each step. An eye-catching goblin holding a bow even larger than the others opened its mouth wide. We are the Goblin Longbow Corps. Know that you cannot escape us. That wasn't the end of the ranged attacks. From the third formation came a few magic spells. These spells burst inside Barbro's army, though still quite a ways in front of his position. In a flash of light, crimson flowers bloomed. They scattered in a flurry of burning petals. The series of explosions sent soldiers flying. The casters wore deep hoods that concealed their faces. In one hand, each held a long staff. These staves radiated a mysterious glow. The one at the head of the group lifted its hood to reveal its wizened face. We are the Goblin Magic Support Corps under General Henry. We use not only buffing spells, but debuffs and attack spells as well. Shall we familiarize you with our powers? That wasn't the only unit casting spells. Next to the Goblin Magic Support Corps, there was a similar-looking unit. There were only 5 of them, but each of their faces looked supremely confident. The goblin out front with the most impudent smile raised its voice. We are the Goblin Magic Bombardment Squad under General Henry. We specialize in offensive area of effect spells. We are the unit with the most attack power, Your Highness. A knight returned to Barbro. It was easy to tell what he was going to say just from the frantic look on his face. The presence of casters meant a significant boost in the enemy army's strength. This is the limit of what we can do. We can suppress them. It's only a matter of time before enemy soldiers reach your position. Please order the withdrawal. Barbaro had to. Even if he told them to stay and fight, the nobles who followed him here would probably scramble to escape. Even if he forced them, they would only resent him and become his future enemies. Do it.